You're listening to the Luminate series on the Forward Faster podcast, providing bite-sized insights for entrepreneurs in the optics, photonics, and imaging sector.
Hello, welcome to the Next Core Forward Faster podcast. And this week we are powered by Luminate. Today, as our guest, we have Nick Davy of the company Andluca. Hi, Nick. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks, Damon. Excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, good to see you. And the question I always ask people at the beginning is, what is the problem you're trying to solve and why is it important?
Yeah, definitely. So Andluca is an advanced materials company working in the smart glass space. We're developing ultraviolet light harvesting, visibly transparent solar coatings. What does that mean? So we use transparent solar coatings to enable wireless smart glass products. So why does that matter? What problem are we solving? So existing smart glass products have external wires that preclude them from being used easily in existing buildings. And that's a shame because smart glass is the most effective and efficient type of glass. And existing buildings in the U.S. account for about 40% of our carbon footprint. So that's obviously a major problem. And building, efficient new construction is great, but we have to address the existing building stock. And actually, inefficient windows account for about $52 billion in wasted energy every year. When I say smart glass, I mean glass or windows that actively and intelligently regulate how much sunlight comes into a building. So of course, the sunlight has a big effect on the HVAC usage. So controlling sunlight dynamically, that's referring to controlling solar heat gain that we feel, and that's reflected in cooling. And it also, it talks about, also means controlling glare, which affects our comfort in a building, which is also, very important.
You mentioned smart windows as kind of a genre. What is the advantage of your smart window technology over other people's technology? Once we've kind of set the wall on that smart windows are some way to control the light coming in and out of a building, what's your advantage over other people?
Our technology is a wireless smart glass system. So all the existing options are wired, meaning that you want to put the glass in, you have to deal with the wires. You have to channel them through the walls. You need an electrician to install that. And you have to provide power to the windows. So as you can imagine, not only is that pretty complex in a new build, but in an existing building, it's a nightmare. In order to disrupt the space, put those wires in, put the channels in. You can't have anybody in the space. It's a lot of labor. So it becomes cost prohibitive. So our technology is the only wireless version of that product. So a wireless smart glass. And we actually partner with the other smart glass companies to take advantage of their existing manufacturing so we can have this wireless smart glass platform. So our innovation is actually providing the power to the glass. Within the glass. That's our innovation. We do that by harvesting ultraviolet light with a transparent solar coating.
In Rochester, we are an older city with lots of older buildings. I imagine, at least I know that I have rules about what I can do in my house. So you're able to do things without actually having to do anything to the structure of the building then.
Yeah, so there's, we all know there's a wide diversity of types of buildings and building ages. And, each decade there was different styles and ideas. But we have a product platform in terms of the installation. So we have different installation partners. Actually, we can do a glass on glass hermetic seal on like a curtain wall or a window wall. So like think of your Class A office building. But we can also address a historic building where, maybe the windows, you can't actually touch them. And so maybe you just need to do like an insulating pane where you're forming a seal between the glass and the frame of the window as opposed to the window itself. So you kind of have to be creative and flexible in order to address all the different flavors of existing building ages and designs that are out there.
So you are a spin out of Princeton. And are there any things that you can say as far as what you may have learned about as being a spin out from a university, because that's a unique kind of startup?
One important takeaway is that it is really beneficial to come from a university ecosystem, especially one that's supportive of innovation. And kind of the moment in time when I was doing the PhD work at Princeton, there was a focus and an effort towards innovation and building an innovation ecosystem. Princeton is historically more of a liberal arts university. There's not a business school. There's not a medical school. There's not a nursing school. So it's a liberal arts powerhouse, right? And so, engineering school actually is also very strong, and you had Bell Labs in New Jersey, and some of that staff actually went to the university. So we have a great engineering school, but there hasn't been a ton of startups historically, and now that's really changing. There's done a lot of work. There's alumni actively involved, and the number of startups spinning out of the university is just totally jumped, like a step change over the last 5 years, which is really exciting. And so we benefited from that. We had alumni that were interested and wanted to be early investors. We had university support to structure licensing agreements and, working together on our first grant that we got first money into the company and stuff like that was actually a StTR, so collaboration with the university. So yeah, it was a great experience for us, great benefit to us, but definitely startups are very different from academia. And so there's also that kind of learning process that you have to undergo making that transition.
Have you done a startup before this one?
No, this is it.
Okay.
This startup has had a few different, lives, I guess, and different phases, So we've been in existence for about 4 years, but, I started out at the university. And so it was like this incubator type thing. And anyways, but yeah, this is the first startup for me and for my co-founder, Professor Lin Lu at the university, who's, been innovating for a long time, but never had started a company. So it's kind of a new frontier, new challenge for both of us.
So what are these, you said a few different stages this has gone through. So if you don't mind, I would really like to hear about how you got to where you are.
Sure. Yeah. So we started the company, you form an LLC as a kind of a shell, so you can apply for government grants. And then, eventually if you receive one, then you really kind of start the company, you have funds to work full time. And so yeah, I mean, we started the company as almost like a garage startup, right? Where I'm still a student, I'm eating ramen noodles and, we hire interns that are temporary, college kids, stuff like that to build a hardware prototype. And we don't have any funding, so we kind of went through that phase of a startup. And then we got funding somewhat abruptly from the National Science Foundation of a $225,000 phase 1 StTR, still a very small team. And so then it was this phase of the startup where now we're formally funded. And with the NSF, by the way, with the government grant, you have to kind of pay yourself market rates, right? You align the budget with what's standard for like a material scientist, for instance. So then I go from ramen noodles to have a material scientist salary. So that was kind of a different phase of the company. And we're in collaboration with the university. We have postdocs working on the project. So that was a very different feel, different considerations. And then during COVID, we kind of were in, a lean startup, low burn, let's just survive COVID. Investor interest they're scared. Office occupancy went to 2% or something, right?
Yeah.
So this was this valley of death period where we kind of learned a lot and we made progress on technology, but then you're trying to, pitch to investors and stuff like that. And then as we get into the fall, all of a sudden now there's this ESG movement, right? And Biden becomes president and we're kind of coming out of COVID. We got angel investment, angel and interest kind of really sped up. And so now we're on like this rocket ship phase, right? Where you're just kind of trying to keep up. You spent so much time convincing people of the vision and the product that you're making is interesting. And then all of a sudden, everybody agrees with you and they just say, well, where's the product? Can we buy it? When can we buy it?
So I have a vocabulary question here because I don't know. What is ESG?
Oh, sorry. Environmental, social governments, like the kind of diversity, inclusion, environmental consciousness, sustainability, those aspects of company, which is both happening on a public and a private level, in the boardroom and in city council, there's more initiative, more discussion around those ideas. So that's helpful for a smart building, smart glass startup.
Okay. Yeah, that really does change the environment. I can see that. The other thing it's probably worthwhile to say, for those who don't know, is StTR is the Small Business Technology Transfer Program, which is probably of great interest to any of the entrepreneurs here. It's fantastic for launching people's careers. Like you said, you went from ramen noodles to having a salary. It's a really great stepping stone for people. I guess another thing I'm wondering is, did you find that is there any sort of security that you get from coming out of a university that you might not have gotten from being an actual garage startup?
Yeah, security is an interesting word. I think legitimacy is like kind of a similar
Okay.
idea.
Okay.
When you just people say, "Well, what is Andluca? I've never heard of Andluca Technologies. What is that?" And you say, "Oh, well, we're a Princeton spin out," and then you can go on with the rest of your spiel. But that's all you kind of have to say, and people
Yeah.
start listening a little bit more closely.
Okay.
But I think that having that brand recognition kind of can't be understated. That's just a huge benefit to us, right? Of whether it be investors or partner companies. Like we have a major company you talk to, and they say, "Hey, uh, this is related. This is research out of Princeton, right?" You say, "Yes." "Oh, okay, okay." So there, yeah, I think that was provided security in a way that you could always get people interested. If one conversation doesn't work out, there's another one that you can have, and you can kind of have the same pitch. So security that you can get doors to open a little
Okay.
bit, which is, yeah, I mean, that's very thankful for that.
Yeah, and this wasn't the original topic of conversation, but I think that actually our listeners will be really interested in this aspect of coming out of an academic situation and moving into entrepreneurship, because it's not the most common way that people do it, but there are a lot of people who do make this transition, and this technology transform idea is increasingly important. I've seen a lot of universities that were kind of closed internal research have been moving toward that. We see that at Rochester Institute of Technology. I noticed that locally. And so we've talked about the brand recognition and how that helped you out. The other thing startups need is money. Um, and what else do you need? Because when I ask people I ask the startup what they need, and they always say money. So what is money? Uh, Aside from money, what's the other big thing that is a need for you growing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my immediate thought is just more hours in the day, which is kind of another way of saying money.
Yeah.
But obviously that's, yeah. But I think one of the big things on my mind is team, right?
Mhm.
So finding the right team members as we look to grow, and move from a lab scale prototype phase to product phase and scale up commercial scale. Yeah, find the right team members. So attracting, identifying talent, uh, people that will be a good fit. Uh, whether that means complementary or aligned. Yeah, that's a big thing in my mind. Besides money,
Yeah,
I think it can be. Would you rather have 20% more investment, or 1 out of 5 team members be incredibly productive and helpful, and innovative? I don't know what would be more. Probably the team member, right?
yeah. And that is almost getting to be a boring question, because literally everyone I ask says team. The thing we need more is people.
Yeah.
And but it comes down, I think, to your more hours in the day thing, that you can't get everything done. And then, like you also said, that there's a complementary skills, because there are things that you can't do. But yeah, literally everyone has said if it's not money, then it's team. And I think that just reiterates that it's true,
Yeah.
right? Um, so if I go a little bit uh, into your history, you moved into academia, and I'm curious, what did you want to be as a kid? What got you into this track of going off into what you studied in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it sounds a little cheesy, but yeah, I've always wanted to work on environmental impact, and more of a math and science person. I was an Eagle Scout as a kid, and so I did like a lot of hiking and fishing and canoeing. And I remember the first time I'm from Houston, which is more of an industrial city, and the first time I went to Colorado and saw the Rocky Mountains, and I was like, oh, this is what nature looks like, is like. And yeah, I mean, I loved it. So when I applied to college, I majored in chemical engineering. My main essay was about addressing waste streams, and pollution, and including carbon emissions. But waste streams are kind of a core problem that we need to solve over the next 50 years or more. So many aspects of the economy are not designed to take responsibility for waste streams. It's kind of a shame because prevention is so much less expensive and time consuming than remediation, but that's a big challenge for, my generation, the generation after us is going to be, working on that and working on closed loop economies. But anyways, your question is, how did I get here? So I applied to chemical engineering, and I didn't really know what that was, but I knew that you do learn chemistry too. You learn math and physics, but you also learn chemistry. So I thought, that's helpful. And I ended up working on energy materials as a research, undergrad research to, towards electric cars. This is kind of pre-Tesla. And so kind of already did like an energy materials thing. And then I did a couple of internships at Chevron. A lot of people coming out of the University of Texas at Austin, where I went to undergrad, go work in Houston for either in chemicals or either in oil and gas at that time. And I went to work for the Energy Technology company as part of Chevron, which is kind of the innovation part. And a lot of people have masters, PhDs in chemistry or chemical engineering. And I worked on bioengineering, biomass, and did this project over the summer. And honestly, great company. They treat their people really well, but my project just goes on the shelf, right? It becomes a data point and a tool, a part of the toolbox in case the economy changes, right? In case there's a carbon tax or anything happens that affects the economics of the core business, which is oil and gas. And another way to say that is, when I asked my mentor what was his crowning achievement of 40 years of work, it was setting up a hydrogen fueling station that really didn't go anywhere, right? It was a great achievement, but then it was deemed that this is not a direction we want to go as a company because of the unit economics. And so really the message from that is, research is what's needed to change the unit economics in order to drive innovation and change how we do things, right? And so, instead of going to work there and continuing that, I went to Princeton to do research and, ate ramen noodles for 6 years, right? In hopes that could make a meaningful impact down the road. And I was very lucky to actually end up doing a startup, that I could hopefully make an impact. So it's actually been a pretty linear story for me, holistically, philosophically, even though so many of the things that happened, some of the opportunities were unexpected.
That's actually a really interesting and important thing, though, is that you came toward this with a problem in mind. What I'm finding really interesting is that if I understand correctly, you have an interest in energy and conservation, and that led you to this window problem, as opposed to the backwards version of having a technology and then trying to find an application. So this was your vision at the beginning, was this, how do we make buildings more efficient then, right?
Yeah, I mean, how do we make our world more sustainable,
Yeah.
right? And then ended up working on a problem that fit into that umbrella. And that's why I decided to go for it, right? And I'm passionate about it is because it fit into that ethos that was already there.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. If you look forward ahead 5 years, what do you see in ecology, energy conservation, that'll be possible that isn't possible right now?
Yeah. I'll kind of answer in two parts. One is specific to smart glass, right? Like, and Luca getting back his wireless smart glass company. We focus on existing buildings, and we kind of have a product platform also with our UV solar that can be used for more than this architectural glass. Can be used in defense applications, consumer products, residential. But I expect to see smart glass go from niche to a little more mainstream. The penetration of smart glass and architectural glass is like less than 0.01% or something, right? Super, super low. That's been partly because of manufacturing volume, which has continued to go up, and partly because of cost and things like that. So that's one thing I expect to see. And as we see smart glass penetrate architectural glass projects and renovations more and more, then the hope is to start counting that avoided carbon and saved energy cumulatively, year over year. And you kind of look at we know about the Bloomberg carbon clock, right? That counts carbon emissions, and you can just you Google the Bloomberg carbon clock, right, and watch it, right? So we'd love to see like a carbon clock for smart glass, and cumulative efforts of all the different companies to avoid carbon. That would be pretty cool. Yeah, and maybe we'll host that on our website, But
does the Bloomberg, is that going up? Is that a bad thing? I'm not familiar with it.
The Bloomberg carbon clock essentially is counting carbon as it goes up and showing an estimate of where we are and the trajectory of parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere.
It would be nice to see that going down,
And
right?
you'd like to see that leveling off or
At
going
least
down.
level off, right?
That's probably going to be a while.
Yeah.
So one thing that we could do is look at our efforts and count carbon going down, right? Is avoided carbon per day, right? Or and per year. The more energy efficiency technologies we put in, not just smart glass, the more carbon we're avoiding over time.
Yeah.
So you see that cumulative, graph essentially, picking up. That would be exciting.
What's the message you would like our entrepreneurs to hear in 10 words or less?
I would like to ask folks to be more energy efficient in their residential homes, because we're focusing on commercial buildings,
Yeah.
but residential buildings account for 1-to-1, account for just as much carbon as commercial. You can believe it. It's 1-to-1. So there's a 1 gigaton per year CO2 from residential, 1 gigaton per year from CO2 from commercial. So it matters. Look for ways to be more energy efficient, and that would be the one thing that I would ask.
Yeah, no, that's an inspiring thing to say, that people can have an impact by just what they do in their own house. And yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on here, Nick, and we look forward to having you involved in the program. It's been great. For our viewers, thank you very much for watching. We have new broadcasts every week. And if you're on YouTube, we would love for you to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Damon.
Bye.